February 14th, 2023, and it's good to see all the sweethearts, husbands and wives and sweethearts are here tonight. Thank you so much for your encouragement with your attendance on tonight. As we would like to make known to our virtual audience, I think I said it on Sunday, and I've been saying it every meeting since then, we are going to do our virtual streaming tonight. But there will become a certain point in time. My man be taking care of me, y'all. Thank you, sir. There will come a certain point in time tonight where we will cut our virtual feed off. So if you're not here, sorry, physically, that's going to be a huge portion of this that you will miss. And I just feel to protect targets, extra targets being painted on our ministry's back, and just to quail, if you will, some things that I'm anticipating from it. We will cut the live feed about 30 minutes into it. We're going to talk in more depth about some things, as well as look at a couple of videos that I may not be licensed to show. So with that being said, thank you for joining us virtually, certainly all of you physically, as we look tonight at this end-time controversy about one world religion. Last week we talked about the mark of the beast. I think that's right. And then the week prior to that, I know I talked about something in regards to end time, suicide. And we've just been talking about some things that may lift some questions in our minds. And I just felt the need to share publicly with some of the things that we've been sharing privately in regards to this one world religion matter. One of our very own millennials, Tahada, he one morning sometime last year, we were having our discipleship meeting, and he shared something with me that I was totally unaware of, and I looked into it and started researching it. And I've done a lot of study behind it and wrote a couple of articles as it relates to it. And I felt it was time to share this with you all. It's not a scare tactic, as I said on Sunday. God doesn't use fear to make believers. God used grace and love. So I'm sharing this out of love. It could be scary. But I'm sharing it out of love because it's my job as the servant, as the shepherd, to make certain that, we equip the people for the work of service. One of my analogies that I'm kind of known for is I will always take my Bible, no matter how big the Bible is or whatever. I'll normally take my Bible and I'll find Genesis chapter 1. Y'all know it. And I'll grab all the way to Revelations chapter 3, which is this much of the Bible. If you ever want to do it, you're welcome to take it and do it yourself. But from Genesis 1 all the way to Revelations 3, everything that God has said and just how he said it has happened just as he said it would happen. Without error, without having to adapt, without having to change. It has happened just as he said it would happen. The only thing left is from Revelation 4 to Revelation 19. I don't have the map pages in it, okay? But the only thing left is this, as it relates to time on earth. Why would I question this little bit, if all of this has been proven to be exactly as God has said it would happen? And so tonight, we're going to be talking about some things in here, and I just wanted to give that example because if we haven't had to question God here, why would we question the veracity, the integrity of what he said here? And so I want that seed to be planted in your mind tonight as we talk about this one world religion thing. I just want to kind of lay some groundwork before we look at some scriptures. there is a movement, and it's been moving, and it has to be in place, because once the church is raptured, chapters 2 and 3 of the book of Revelation, automatically some things begin to happen. Some things begin to happen. And there are things that are spoken of in after Revelation 3, beginning in Revelation 4 through 19, that speaks of there having to have been some type of, one world religion. There has to be some type of religion where, to borrow from that phrase, why can't we all get along, where it appears as if everybody's getting along under one religion. There's Christians, there are Jews, and there are Muslims. Catholics, Jews, and Muslims. And I apologize that I had to say sorry about that, because one of the things we're going to talk about when we get off of the camera tonight is identifying and determining Christianity with Catholicism. For the most part, when a person says, I'm a Christian, I'm a believer, and whether they are Catholic or Protestant or whatever, most people understand that when you say that you're a Christian, they can embrace Roman Catholicism. And we'll talk about that. So there's been a movement toward this one world religion with, again, Catholicism, Jews, and Muslims. And they have been meeting and forming, laying the groundwork to form this one world religion. Now, the question is, how can people have one religion and agree on one religion, and that religion does not have Jesus Christ as the Son of God, doesn't acknowledge Jesus Christ as God? How can that be? And any religion that would do that, it would stand to reason that religion would support the Antichrist, the pseudo-religion that will exist after the church is raptured, the pseudo-peace that will appear to take place on earth when the church is raptured and all things are being let loose on the world, the tribulation period, all of those things. And so how do we get to that? It can't formulate after the church is raptured, because it's in place before the church is raptured, which means it has to be being formed now, because when we look at time and the things that the Bible speaks about, the return of Christ is a signless event. The return of Christ, which that happens after Revelation 19, but the which he says he comes as a thief in the night. That's the second return of Christ. But the rapture of the church is not necessarily a signless event, but there are things that tell you, that point to, the church being raptured, that these things will be taking place. And so it's obvious that some things have to be being established now. And the question is, are we paying attention to these things? Because if we don't pay attention to these things, the Bible talks about people being deceived. The Bible talks about the very elect possibly in being deceived. The Bible talks about people not even knowing that these things are happening, and they will embrace the things that are being led by the Antichrist, which, as we talked about last week, how there is possibility, we believe, I believe that there's a possibility for a person during the tribulation period to take the mark of the beast, but then yet still be saved, because the Bible only speaks of one unpardonable, unforgivable sin, which is blaspheming the Holy Spirit. And, of course, we know during the tribulation period, there are going to be people who are going to be saved. Jews and Gentiles will be saved. Matter of fact, the reason why it's kind of difficult to understand some things that happen from Revelation 4 to Revelation 19 is because God is kind of fulfilling his promise to the Jews at that particular time, and he's actually going to allow the Jews to enact or re-engage in many of the Old Testament things that they did in regards to symbolisms, in regards to traditions. He's going to allow them to, engage in those things again after the church has been raptured. Of course, things are going to be all pointing to receiving Christ as Lord and Savior. And so that's just so much stuff that one must understand. And again, tonight, virtually, I'm only going to lay the groundwork for it, after which we're going to, when we go off of live stream, we will point to some more specific things that I need you to see. So, with this one world religion thing in mind, I want to read some scriptures to kind of lay the groundwork. You have them before you. Daniel 9, 26 through 27. The book of Daniel is a prophetic book, and it talks about much of the end time. Listen to what it says. Then after the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing, and the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. And its end will come with the flood. Even to the end, there will be war. Desolations are determined. And he will make a firm covenant with the many for 1 week. But in the middle of the week, he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. And on the wing of abominations will come one who will make desolate, even until a complete destruction, one that is decreed and poured out on the one who makes desolate. When you read that verse, it says in there that in the middle of the week he will put a stop to the sacrifice and grain offerings. As I told you, after the church is raptured, many of the Old Testament Jews will re-engage a lot of the Old Testament sacrifices and things that they participated in. And if you don't understand that, that's when some people say, well, I believe the rapture's already taken place because of this or that and the other. Luke chapter 12, which we are preaching through on Sunday mornings now, verse 54 through 56 says, and he was also saying to the crowds, when you see a cloud rising in the west, immediately you say a shower is coming. And so it turns out, pause right there. How many of y'all know, I know we got a lot of people who body tell them about the weather, but just pay attention to it next time. It actually determines which wind or direction of something coming, what actually is going to happen. Generally, when you see stuff coming from the west, it's going to bring stuff like rain, stuff like that, fog and all that stuff. When you see the wind blowing from the south, like from Galveston up here, it normally brings hot heat. A lot of people don't know that, but it really does. Just next time you start listening at the news and you'll see what it says. Now remember, this is written years and years ago. It says, and he was saying to the crowds, when you see a cloud rising in the west, I love the way he says this, immediately you say a shower was coming, and so it turns out. And then notice what he says, and when you see a south wind blowing, you say it will be a hot day, and it turns out that way. You hypocrites. You know how to analyze the appearance of the earth and the sky, but why do you not analyze this present time? Ooh, that'll preach right there. That'll preach right there. That'll teach right there. He said, you know how to tell when the weather going to rain, when it's going to be hot, when it's going to be cold. You know how to do all of that stuff by just looking at the sky. But I've given you all of these things, but you won't even analyze them to see if these things are true in this present time. You hypocrites. That rings true today, too. We have people who, can predict all type of stuff. But when you get to talking about Jesus and God and the Bible ringing true and the things that are actually happening now, they kind of shy away from that. Let's look at 1 Thessalonians 5, 1 through 11. Again, this is all for groundwork. It says, now as to the times and to the epochs, brethren, you have no need of anything to be written to you. Well, what else I need to tell you? That's literally what he's saying. What else I need to tell you? For you yourselves know full well that the day of the Lord will come. How? Just like a thief in the night. He says, you will know that the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night. While they are saying, and please understand this, y'all, because this is critical to what I'm going to show you about end times and one world religion, while everybody else is promoting peace and safety and everything is going to be all right, right in the middle of all that, he said, then destruction will come upon them suddenly, like labor pains upon a woman with a child. And what? They will not escape. But you, brethren, are not in the darkness, that this day should overtake you like what? A thief. For you all are sons of the light and sons of the day. We are not of the night nor of darkness. So then, let us not sleep as others do, but let us what? Be alert and sober. In other words, like what we've been preaching through, be what? Awake, be waiting and ready. Not living our lives like y'all, things are not actually going to happen like God said they're going to happen. For those who sleep, do their sleeping at night, and those who get drunk at night. But since we are of the day, then let us be sober, having put on the breastplate of faith and love and the helmet and the hope of what? Salvation. For God has not destined us for wrath, but for obtaining what? Salvation through Christ Jesus, who died for us, so that whether we are awake or asleep, we will what? Live together with him. Therefore, encourage one another and build up one another just as you are also doing. And that's what should be happening this particular time. Y'all, when we get to looking at all the things that are happening in the world, from catastrophes, from destructions and all these things happen, we who are awake, y'all, these things should not be surprising us or overtaking us. And we can encourage each other by even the tragedies that we're seeing in the world today. Because it's fulfilling the Bible. It's saying just what God said. So we should be encouraged, because we know absent from the body, present with the Lord, right? Then I think one last set of scriptures, in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. It says, now we request, brethren, with regard to the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our gathering together to him, that you not be quickly shaken from your composure or be disturbed either by a spirit or a message or a letter as is from us. Because again, a lot of false teaching and stuff are going on. To the effect that the day of the Lord has come. That's people who have said, the rapture has come, the day of the Lord has come, all these things are taking place. Let no one in any way deceive you, for it will not come unless the apostasy comes first, which we're going to talk about. And the man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of destruction. Verse 4. Who opposes and exalts himself, remember those words, above every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple of God, displaying himself as being God. And people are going to worship him. That's the beast, the Antichrist. The system will be so set up that people will seek to serve him and to surrender to him. With that being said, we're going to just zoom through our lesson, and then we're going to deal with the difficult stuff. Opening thought. What many don't like about Reformed theology is that they see it as a divorce or a fracture from the Catholic Church. Now, again, I taught you over the years, about the reformers, the Protestants, to protest how Martin Luther left the Catholic Church, and he put his 95 Theses on the door. He nailed it there, and he basically said, hey, I can't do Catholicism anymore. because of what they were promoting. And off camera, we're going to talk about what they promote, what they were promoting. And so people don't like Reformed theology because they see it as it was a fracture or a divorce or a separation from the Roman Catholic Church. And you know, when folk get divorced, then you always say that somebody had to be bad or wrong, because you don't get divorced unless you know. And so it was an indictment, per se, on the Catholic Church that they were doing things wrong. We're going to talk about the Council of Trent off camera, because when you understand the Council of Trent, which was the Roman Catholic Church respond to the fracture from the Protestants and the Reformers, and the position that they take and took and still say today, the authority that they have in regards to speak over Scripture, it's frightening, ladies and gentlemen. Extended opening statement. Many wonders if this one world religion already exists today. The answer to that would be no, because one specific one world religion of the end times cannot be fully developed until the tribulation of the Antichrist rules. Now, existing and forming is two different things. It hasn't been acknowledged and taken its place of prominence, but ladies and gentlemen, it's already forming and shaping. And I'll show you that tonight based on some videos and everything. However, the growth of the religious pluralism, interfaith dialogue that promotes the idea that all religions are equal. Y'all, we see this today in so much other stuff. That's why people want to kind of, bring everybody in and say, you can have your way, you can have your. It's just to saturate us in political and social stuff so that we will accept it in the religious world. Says, promotes that all religions are equal, and the erroneous teaching that many ways lead to God or to heaven all exist today. And y'all know that's where, for me, we break off. I can't ride with you when you have anything that promotes there's more than one way to God. And every one world religion promotes that there is. These views certainly foreshadow what Scripture predicts will be more prevalent in the future when the world unites under one religion under the power of the Antichrist. I know this sounds so, that would never happen. It's going to happen, y'all. This is exactly what Paul was telling Timothy. Look at 2 Timothy 4:3-4. Everybody thinks he's saying something else, but let me tell you what he's really saying here. He's saying, for the time will come, and we quote this all the time, when they will not endure sound doctrine, but want to have their ears tickled, they will accumulate to themselves teachers in accordance to what? Their own desires, and will turn away their ears from the truth and will turn aside to what? To myths. This is what Paul is telling Timothy, even in that. He's saying, listen, the day is going to come where people are going to turn away from the truth and will embrace all kind of stuff. Y'all, we see it today. And it's going to become even more prevalent in the days to come. As it relates to commentary, for the sake of time tonight, I won't read all of that, but Revelations chapter 17, verses 1-18, I think I might try to read the first 6 or 7 verses. It says, then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and spoke. And you got to understand how Revelation is written. Revelation chapter 2 and 3 talks about the 7 churches. And, the church is raptured. Then Revelation 4, when all of these 7 bowls and seals and all of these things are opened up and all hell, if you will, breaks loose on earth. This is kind of what it's talking about. One of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and spoke with me, saying, come here, and I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters. Well, every one of these words is very important. Go ahead. With whom the kings of the earth will commit acts of immorality, and those who will dwell on the earth were made drunk with the wine of her immorality. And he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast full of blasphemous names, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was clothed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a gold cup of full abominations, abominations, that Louisiana tongue, abominations. Abominations. Thank you very much. Full of abominations and of the unclean things of her immorality. A couple more verses. And on her forehead was a name that was written, a mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of the harlots and of the abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the witnesses of Jesus. When I saw her, I wondered greatly. I think I'll read 1 or 2 more verses. That'll be it. And the angel said to me, why do you wonder? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. I'll pause right there. Reading on in my commentary, those 18 verses speak of this great prostitute or great harlot. That is generally understood as a metaphor for a false religion that will exist during the tribulation period. Did you get what I'm saying? The great prostitute, the great harlot, is a metaphor for the religion, the false religion that will exist during the tribulation period. Many have debated the identity of this religion, with some arguing the Roman Catholic Church, Islam, or some other large religious movement that will be at the end times one world religion. However, it is more likely that the false religion of these last days will consist of an inclusive religion that allows for a pluralistic view of God. A pluralistic view of God is basically, you tell me what your God look like, I'm going to tell you what my God look like. We're just going to all agree that, you got different views of the same God. Yeah, we don't do that with nothing else. Sometimes me and my wife are getting dressed and others. She would put on one color. I grab them, look, I said, baby, that ain't that color. Yeah, it is. No, that color, that ain't that color. That's a whole different shade. It's a whole different color. And we won't even agree on the shades of the color. And yet what this is saying, what's going to happen is that people literally are going to agree to have different views of God. The world will include even liberal monotheistic groups that see all religions as one. That's what that word mono means. And are willing to worship the Antichrist, what? In the last days. Because we told you about it, because people are going to be willingly taking the what? The mark of the beast. Whatever this religion is, it will certainly exclude any faith that is exclusive and refuses to worship the Antichrist or his image. I'm going to say this again. This religion will exclude any faith that is exclusive. And y'all know that's what Christianity is, right? Christianity is exclusive. It's not inclusive. It's only one way, only one God, only one, yes, Christianity is exclusive. It is not inclusive. So this one world religion will exclude any faith that is exclusive, basically meaning Christianity, and refuses to worship the Antichrist or his image. Revelation 17:6, which we just got through reading that, and we read Revelation 17:2, where it talks about the false religion will be permitted, and and those who follow Jesus during the tribulation, they will what? Experience death. Second paragraph. The false religion will dominate all the peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues of the earth. You say, wait a minute, how's that going to happen? Well, you got to remember, first of all the believers have been raptured. People will be coming to Christ during that particular time. So the dominant religion will be what? A false religion. It says, people and multitudes of nations and tongues. Matter of fact, look at Revelation. Thank you. And he said to me, the waters which you saw where the harlot sits are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. Meaning that it will have universal authority, no doubt, given by who? The Antichrist, who will rule the world at that time. Verses 2 and 3 describe the harlot as committing adultery with the kings of the earth, referring to the false religious influence among world rulers. Everybody remember that? Matter of fact, go back to verse 2. I want to show you something. When we look at this video, I need y'all to remember these verses. It says, with whom the kings of the earth will have committed immoral acts, and those who dwell on earth will be made drunk with the wine of her immorality. Verse 3, with whom the kings of the earth, and he carried me away in the spirit of the wilderness. I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast full of blasphemous names, full of having 7 heads and 10 horns. So the kings of the earth, it describes the harlot that's committing adultery with the kings of the earth. Now, who are the kings of the earth? It's going to be the kings of the earth at that particular time. Referring to the false religious influences among the world rulers and the influential people. Remember that. The reference to being drunk with the wine of her adulteries may refer to those who are drunk with the power they receive from worshiping the false god of the false religion. Satan frequently ensnares those who lust for power, drives them away from the worship of the true and living God. Ladies and gentlemen, you show me somebody who lusts to have power on earth, and I'll show you somebody who is being driven away from being a humble servant of God. And that's one of the incriminating things that happen in ministries. And I'm so serious about this when I see men who are fighting for power and prestige in ministry. I separate. If I can't correct them, I separate myself from them, because it always ends with this. If being a servant, Mark 10 and 45 was good enough for Jesus, then it should be good enough for those of us who have been given the privilege to serve as leaders. That's what it says. It says they will be ensnared by the power, and it's going to drive them away from the worship of the true and living God. The alliances forged by the false religion will unite church and state as never before. So now what you're going to see is these political alliances that have always been separated, these religions who have always been separated, they're going to come together. And listen, it's nothing new. We saw it all through the Bible where enemies of God's people would unite together to go against God and his people. We see it all through the Old Testament, New Testament as well. So it says that whether they will, So verse 6. It describes the harlot being drunk with the blood of the saints and the blood of those who testify of Jesus. Whether they will be martyred at the hand of the Antichrist or being systematically starved. You know how they're going to be systematically starved. We talked about that last week, right? Because if they don't carry the mark of the beast, they can't purchase, buy anything. They can't engage in commerce, economy, anything unless they wear the mark of the beast on their right hand or their forehead. We talked about that last week. So those who oppose the worldwide religion will be what? Killed. And those who refuse to worship the Antichrist by accepting his mark will be unable to buy and sell, thereby making themselves survival very difficult. There it is, Revelation 13, 16, 17, in case you weren't here last week. Notice what Revelation 13, 16, 17 says. And we talked about this when we talked about the mark of the beast. And he causes all the small and the great and the rich and the poor and the free men and slaves to be given a mark on their right hand or on their forehead. And he provides that no one will be able to buy or sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name, which we know is 666. So, when the church is raptured and all this hell breaks loose on earth, man, you know how we always talking about how we being persecuted and all that. Y'all, we're not being persecuted now as believers. Now, just for the fact somebody talk bad about us. But the day and time is going to come that if you're not a believer, when the church is raptured and you be through here, you talk about persecution, yeah. There'll be people who will die if they won't accept this false one-world religion. Yeah. Eventually, the harlot who loses favor with the Antichrist, now remember, the harlot will lose favor with the Antichrist, and we told you who the harlot was earlier, who will want to receive the world's worship for himself. See, I told you, I've been telling you for years, Satan, the Antichrist, the beast, he's going to start out as a political thing. You know, why don't we all get along? And everybody, yeah, we're into this political thing. Yeah, man, we can do this. Why don't we unite on the political thing? And then what happens is while they all get around there, he's going to go and set himself in the temple and say, now I want to take religious power. Now you got to understand, all the other religions in the world, you know, they're saying, wait a minute, how you go? So then that's going to create a problem. Even though it's one world religion, but there's still going to be many different shades or beliefs of that. And so when he sets himself up, you know, as to be worshiped, it says to receive the world's worship for himself, he will not share the adoration of the world with the prophets and the priests of the false religion, no matter how obsequious or fawning they may be. Once the Antichrist gains the world's amazed attention by his miraculous return from the dead, which look at Revelations 13:3 and 12 and 14, and then we'll be ready to cut this off. So Revelation 13, and I saw one of his heads as if it had been slain, and his fatal wound was healed, and the whole earth was amazed and followed after the beast. He exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and he makes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast whose fatal wound was healed. Then is it one more verse? Yeah, 14. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth because of the signs which it was given him to perform in the presence of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who had the wound of the sword and has come to life. All this stuff that the Bible talks about, no images and all that stuff, there's going to come a time with this one world religion, they're going to be doing all those very things that God instructed people not to do. He will turn on the false religious system and he will destroy it, establishing himself as God. He's bringing all of them together under this pseudo-peace, under this pseudo-political power, but he's doing it all for the particular reason to establish himself as God. Y'all, this ain't the first time we heard this. In Isaiah, 12 and 14, you remember it said, Lucifer, how have you fallen from Satan? And you got to remember what his thing was. He wanted to be what? Worship. When he meets Jesus in the New Testament at the baptism, right after the trial in the wilderness, he said his fasting in the wilderness, he's not fasting, but his trial in the wilderness, he says, bow down and worship me. You got to understand, Satan been trying to be worshiped by the world since the beginning. Well, not the beginning, but since he failed. This is what it's all been about. And that's all he wants. Says he will turn on the false religious system and destroy it, establishing himself of God. The deception, Jesus tells us, will be so great that if it were possible, look at Matthew 24 and 24, that even the very elect, look what it says, for false Christs and false prophets will arise and will show great signs and wonders so as to mislead, if possible, even the very what? Elect. Yeah. Leads me to believe that it's a possibility further for someone to be deceived, to take the mark, but certainly later to be forgiven and receive Jesus Christ, Lord. But the persecution, the stuff that they will endure under this one world religion, which leads to the beast, the Antichrist, establishing themselves as God. Y'all, it's going to be something unimaginable to live through. And while all these things are happening, parts of the world will be being destroyed. Yeah. Continents will be being destroyed. America won't exist anymore because God is going to be destroying parts of the world so that it could force the Jews back to the land of Jerusalem, the land that he made promises with. Y'all, all of those things are very, very important. They're very germane to understanding what's behind the acceptance of false religion, false truths and principles, which would drive people to one world religion. It's unfortunate at this particular time we will stop our live feed and we will join now with some videos, and I'll share you some even deeper challenges. Thank you.